What's up, everybody? We're back here on FreeCodeCamp.org with the Daily Coding Challenge for October 3rd. This one is called Password Strength, and it does what you think it might. It checks for the password strength. Given a password string, return weak, medium, or strong based on the strength of the password we're given here in our parameter password. Password is evaluated according to the following rules. It is at least 8 characters long. It contains both uppercase and lowercase letters. It contains at least one number. It contains at least one special character from this specific set of 8 special characters. And we want to return weak if the password meets fewer than 2 of the rules. Return medium if the password meets 2 or 3 of the rules. Return strong if the password meets all 4 rules. And we look at the test cases. Looks like it checks for 3, 4 weak passwords, 5 medium passwords, 2 strong passwords. The straightforward way to approach this would be with a bunch of if statements. And you could probably figure that out on your own. That's not too hard. You know, we have the password length is greater than or equal to 8, right? And we keep track of how many rules are met with like a rules met variable. Start off at 0. Every time we find a rule that's met, we increment that. And then we go through doing that 4 times. And then to return, we have like this if-else ladder where, you know, if the rules met are less than 2, then we return weak. And if else, we return medium, or else we return strong. And that is a perfectly fine solution. There ain't nothing wrong with that. So if that's where your mind goes and that's the solution you're coming up with, and you're just kind of wondering about these conditions, like how do you check for an lowercase number or a letter? How do you check for at least one number? How do you check for the symbols? Your mind might start to gravitate toward like iterating through the string and checking the characters and keeping track of what characters you found. Do they match these conditions? You can do that too. The best way I think this can be done is iterating through an array of conditions. So I don't commonly really like if-else ladders very much. They kind of hurt my eyes nowadays. So given this pattern, maybe you'll like this more. But like I said, the other pattern there with a lot of if-else, there's nothing wrong with that if that's where your mind goes. But I want you to consider this solution for a second. If we have, you know, condition of conditions, if we iterate through a set of conditions like this, where we have this arrow function that we can call, and I'll just do this really quickly to like get the pattern out there to present this to you. Let's pretend, you know, this one checks for lower uppercase, this one checks for the digit or the one number, this one checks for the special character. And we have this array of arrow functions that check a Boolean expression like this. We can just iterate through them and check, you know, calling the condition as we iterate through it, pass it the password. If that's true, then rules met gets incremented. Effectively the same thing as multiple if statements, but now we can pull these conditions out of this function and put them somewhere else if we need to, right? They could be over here, you know, get conditions, and it returns this array instead, right? This can live somewhere else. You know, that's what I mean by it's a little bit more composable. At the end of the day, if you're working on a web app, you're probably going to be using something like Zod or some kind of validation library where you do a completely different thing and just leverage the library. But if you're writing your own thing, this can be helpful because you can put it somewhere else. Because this function needs to be more about checking for how many of the rules are met rather than the rules themselves. So with that in mind, you know, we have this. How do we return it? We can do that if else thing. Or we can use a ternary, and that might be, that's like more clear to me usually of what's going on, because line by line we can specify the conditions. Rules met less than 4 are medium, and then otherwise it's greater than 4, so we'll return strong. And this is a little bit more compact. We don't have to have all the curly braces and if statements. This makes more sense to my eyes, but to each their own. You know, this is the solution I'll be going with because that's just kind of what came off the top of my head just now. Now it's just a matter of updating these conditions up here. And the easiest way to do that I can think of is with regular expressions. This next one is going to be a little less basic, but we can accomplish it by, getting our regex and calling test on the S string that's being passed into this little arrow function here. And we can use forward look-aheads because we want both of these conditions to be true. We need an uppercase and we need a lowercase. So where in an if statement that would probably look like, is it, has a lowercase and has uppercase. Do something like that and pass the password in, and that's essentially the logic we need. That's essentially what we're doing here, but in regex we can use, it's a really useful operator here, the look ahead, positive look ahead. And this with a dot asterisk means look ahead across the entire string for this capture group. So look ahead across the whole string. Does it have lowercase a through z? And we could do the same thing for uppercase. Boom. This is a bit more compact, kind of relies on you knowing about positive look-aheads. And I don't know what the dot asterisk is called, but I think of it as like here, anywhere. That's kind of how my eyes read it. We're looking ahead to any point in the string. Does it have what this capture group specifies? And that's what both of these like inner expressions are doing in this regular expression. And we are testing the string that's being passed in. It's being passed in here as it iterates through the array, the conditions array. It's coming in here as the parameter to this arrow function. It's being passed into the test function being called on this regular expression. So that's the logical flow of what's going on. And this Boolean expression that constitutes the body of this arrow function is returning true or false based on that. If you're not used to using arrow functions this way, it's effectively the same thing as doing this. We just need a return statement, and if you like semicolons, this is where you put the semicolon. So maybe that looks more familiar to you. Yeah. But with this, with the arrow function, we can just kind of put the expression into parentheses, and it's just going to run that expression, call that function. We could do the same thing here. So I can copy the regex here, and what's the next one? We're checking to see if it has at least one number. And that's a lot more simple. We just need one capture group. And does it contain a digit, right? Equally, I think we could go with 0 through 9 too. That makes more sense to you because we're doing A through Z up here. Yeah, I'll leave it at the digit, the D digit. And this last one contains at least one special character from this specific set of characters. Got two options. You know that W is the word specifier, and a word is considered a character that is uppercase or lowercase A through Z or 0 through 9. And uppercase W means not word. It negates that. So it says everything that isn't a lowercase or uppercase A through Z, 0 through 9. And that would be any of the symbols. But you notice they specify these specific symbols, and that doesn't include, /, it doesn't include question mark, angle, square, curly braces, square brackets, parentheses. There's a lot that's being left out of these symbols that they specified. So the uppercase W would consider these as well as these. So maybe the more correct solution would just include adding these to the capture group. I think, and this is where my lack of knowledge comes into play. I feel like we need to escape the caret and the dollar because those mean something in regex. But since it's sitting in a capture group, maybe we don't. I'm not sure. We can play with it if this doesn't pass or has a problem with this. But this is what they want. We want to check to see if it has one of these, at least one of these. And that would be my solution, really. I think I might move the rules met down here and the conditions up here. And in this pattern, it's really easy to recompose the rules. Do I want to add more to the rule set? We could even take rules met and initialize it as the conditions.length. Oh, I guess we can't do that. So anyway, my whole goal with that is, what we would do is probably set it down here. We would say conditions length here, and then this is kind of the halfway mark, conditions length divided by 2, right? If it has less than half the conditions, then it's a weak password. If it has somewhere between half and all of them, it's medium. And if it has all of them, it's strong, right? Because the goal there is to kind of get rid of the 2 and the 4 for like being magic numbers. Because now we can add to the conditions. We could add more conditions really easily here, just adding another arrow function with a Boolean expression in it to specify new conditions for this password check. And it should scale out all right, given the new length values. But that's sort of what you gain from doing something like this. I'll kind of reset this back to what we had because it's a bit more exact to the description. So enough yapping. I've yapped enough. Now we hold our breath and run the tests. Cowabunga, man. That is a solution. So like I said, nothing wrong with doing the if-else stuff. I just maybe wanted to bring up a pattern like this to expose you to another way of looking at a problem like this. Thanks very much for listening. Appreciate your time and attention. If you learned something from this video, if you thought this was cool at all, click that like button. It helps my brand new channel out. And subscribe to the channel for more challenge videos like this. I'm going to be doing other content. I'm going to get into LeetCode and DSA here pretty soon. But I'll keep on working on these daily coding challenges every day from FreeCodeCamp because I think they're fun. Like I said, I appreciate you. Good luck on your coding journey, and I will talk at you later.